Oh my gosh. Fairfield, Fairfield, Fairfield. How are you? And welcome to Fairfield 2.0. Today with Mr. David Hawthorne, and thank you for coming by. We've switched things up, if you've noticed. I'm on the left. Gee, what a surprise. And David is in the hot seat today. We're gonna grill him good. But first, we're gonna be very nice, and we're gonna ask him things like, well, where'd you grow up? David Hawthorne.
Well, first, thanks for having me on, but I want to make sure nobody watches this, right?
Nobody watches the show. Right. We know that for sure.
Okay. So I was born and raised in San Francisco.
Cool.
And it was a great experience. And I was part of the 60s movement with, I lived in Haight-Ashbury, and we used to go to Avalon Ballroom and spent one evening with Janis Joplin and hung out with Big Brother and the Holding Company and Country Joe and the Fish and Quicksilver Messenger Service and all the great bands from the 60s. It was a lot of fun growing up in San Francisco. Very, very sophisticated town in those days. Lots of culture, lots of diversity, and lots of music, and it was a great experience.
Can I ask you what the theory is behind that? How did San Francisco become that hub? And it'll always have that stereotype.
Maybe because it was very progressive, educated, liberal, and it was definitely all these different ethnic groups together. So it was, I don't know. Even before the whole Haight-Ashbury thing, there was beatniks,
right?
And I had good friends that were beatniks when I was a kid, and we had these places in North Beach. You'd go to these coffee houses, and you would drink coffee and listen to poetry and
was it the stereotypical thing where people would wear berets and they'd be playing bongos and the little cigarette dangling in the sunglasses?
Absolutely.
Oh, I could picture it now.
Absolutely.
I just love I love sort of the counterculture culture that came out of there. But what ended up happening is you have the Grateful Dead, and you have Jefferson Airplane. You have all sorts of groups that came out of there that went on to do such amazing things in music. What do you attribute that to? I mean, the country, I guess the country was focused on that. They liked it, so they were supporting that kind of identity and
yeah, I don't know. It was just a combination of things. In fact, there's a poster at KRUU, the radio station, with a human being from January 1967, and I was at that human being with Timothy Leary and a lot of people. It was just, I don't know, it was a wave. And as a kid growing up in San Francisco, we didn't know that the rest of the world wasn't on the same wave. And I was shocked. We ended up driving across the country at one point. We were down in New Orleans for a Mardi Gras. And it was like Easy Rider, if you know that whole thing.
Yeah.
We had long hair and beards, and everybody else didn't. And we were really, we got in some hot spots in those days.
Wow.
But the music was just great in those days. We used to go to Avalon Ballroom was a great place. Bill Graham ran the place.
Yeah.
And, they had these big light shows, psychedelic light shows, and great music, great bands, and it was a hangout.
You have a Janis Joplin story?
Very minor. I mean, I just used to love her, and she would play there all the time. And I talked to her one night, I just said, because she was singing, nobody sang Summertime like she did.
Yeah.
And I just said to her, I said, Janis, if you ever make, in those days they had singles, they were called these little 45 record players.
Singles?
Singles. It was a little 45 record.
Oh, they weren't unmarried people?
No.
No, okay.
Okay.
Singles, okay.
Stay with me, Michael.
No, I'm sorry.
So 45 record player with single songs. And so she would sing Summertime. And I said, if you ever made Summertime as a single, I will personally buy 1 million records so you sell 1 million.
Did you keep your promise?
No, but she didn't do it.
But yeah.
But she was terrific.
She was terrific. One of my favorite, the Pearl album. What a classic album.
Yeah, she was phenomenal. And she lived at a place where the Big Brother and the Holding Company lived. They had a house. It was hippies, commune in those days, and we had a lot of fun. So I went over there a few times.
And that was how it all started. It was Big Brother and the Holding Company. She was the lead vocalist of that, and then she, I guess, through promotion and all that, and her becoming a bit of a cult figure and a star herself, it became a Janis Joplin entity, really, more than anything else, right?
Right. All those guys. Charlie Musselwhite used to play there, and I just saw him a couple years ago. I mean, we still talk to each other, and he plays harmonica. He's one of the great classical blues harmonica players in the world. He just came out did an album with somebody. Trying to remember who it was. It's a new thing right now. That Charlie Musselwhite and some other guy. I think it's Ben Harper.
Oh, and Ben Harper.
Yeah.
Oh, that does sound familiar. I'll bet your son Galen Hawthorne has
Galen knows all
the
music.
vinyl copy.
Galen knows all the music stuff. He's the DJ in the family.
He really. Where did he get his musical
I don't know.
knowledge?
I don't know. But I can tell you, I had a 12-string Fromis guitar in the 1960s. I don't know much about music in those days, but I loved the guitar, and I would do an open tuning with the guy who had a sitar, and we would sit all night doing these ragas. His sitar and my 12-string.
So you bring in the concept of ragas. So you were looking a little east, but I guess in that time period, everybody was looking east.
Right. When I was in Haight-Ashbury, when I first heard about Maharishi and
who?
Maharishi Mahesh
Right.
And I heard about meditation. In those days, I wasn't quite ready for it. I waited a few more years, and then it finally came by again. And that's the second time I was working for an advertising agency back east, and I heard about this thing called meditation. So I went and I listened to this lecture. And I thought, this is good. This is a good thing. This can help stress. But I really thought I was going to meditate for a few weeks, maybe a few months.
Yeah.
That was 40 years ago. And I still meditate. So meditation is a very good thing, and it helped me get out of that whole hippie life in those days. It was fun life for a while, but then you have to kind of grow up, and I got married and had children, and you have to be responsible. So
3 beautiful children, Sarah, Brian, and Galen.
Thank you.
I also wanted to say, when you were talking about that, I'm imagining it got you out of the hippie phase, I guess, if you want to, as a transition or whatever, but also the stress of Madison Avenue, that must have been pretty rough.
Well, I ended up moving back to New Jersey, and I was working for an advertising agency in New Jersey. But
which one? I don't mean to interrupt with stuff like this, but because we do have a few common things here. What was the advertising agency? It
was called Max Walter Advertising. It was actually in Newark, and I was, I'm from San Francisco, so I wasn't really familiar with
the whole
East Coast and the whole ethnic stuff and all that kind of went on. But I was fascinated with advertising, and I got a lucky break to work at an ad agency, so I went to work. But it was downtown Newark, and in those days, there was like 400,000 people would go in every morning on the train.
Yep.
At work, and then as soon as nighttime came, they got out of town. It was that kind of thing.
I remember the Erie Lackawanna. Everybody used to jump on the Erie Lackawanna. I lived in Jersey, various places. You lived in a couple places too.
So I worked for that agency for about 6 or 7 years, and toward the end of it, I really wanted to work on Madison Avenue. So I would go every day, commute over to Madison Avenue, give out resume, knocks on doors. But after I did that for about a month, I thought, this is ridiculous. I don't want to work in New York City if I'm living in New Jersey.
But that's the key thing. It's like living in New Jersey and then working in New York is sort of the norm, and also Connecticut.
But it was just the commute all the time. You spend hours and hours on the commute. Trains, buses.
Yeah, but you know what? The funny
subways,
thing is,
whatever.
I did. When I look at that time period, I'm just a little bit after you, but on the other hand, some of that time that I spent on, especially those old trains and the Erie Lackawanna line and all that, some of those memories are really, I romanticize them maybe now more than the 90-degree heat that used to be in those cars when you were riding on the way to New York for an hour and a half or whatever it was. But there was something about that where I didn't feel the time. I didn't feel that commute. Maybe also because I was on a train. But there were some rituals I would do. When I would get to Hoboken, I would have close your ears, vegetarians. I used to have the traditional hot dog at the Hoboken at the Hoboken station. And then we would take the PATH into New York. The PATH, then of course, it was established by the time I was doing this stuff. I was going to college. I was going to a college in New Jersey and commuting to New York because I was doing some music in New York too. So I loved that lifestyle.
When you're young and you don't mind, and for me, when I would commute, I could at least meditate, which was a great thing to do.
And that's what, by the time I had learned to meditate, I did the same thing. Yeah.
But I ended up finally bailing out of the desire to work on Madison Avenue, and then I got offered a job as a vice president of a publishing company, and so in New Jersey. So I had an office in Summit and a house in Madison. It was very comfortable, and that's where I met my current wife. We've been married now for 30 years, Eileen and I.
Nice. She at the publishing company?
No.
Yeah, in
we met at a wedding, and I was friends with friends with the groom, and she was friends with the bride, and they put us at the same table.
Those sneaky.
They got us, and
couples.
We started dancing, and we've been dancing ever since. So it's really good.
Sweet, nice.
So
And I was trying to, as you know, I was trying to get Eileen on the show. Hello, Eileen, how are you?
Yeah.
It's
not too bad.
let's talk about Eileen for a couple of seconds because of her art.
Right.
When Galen was on the show, your son Galen Hawthorne, the amazing Galen Hawthorne, sort of like the amazing Kreskin from the 70s.
I got a couple Galen stories.
We definitely have to get to them. Sorry, Galen. But Eileen's art.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said Galen said she won first, second, and third prize in a contest recently. What?
She submitted 3 pieces into the Southeast Iowa Regional Art Show, and I think there was 80 pieces altogether submitted. And she won a first and a second and a third with her 3 pieces, which she's she's great. She was a graphic artist years ago, and then of course we had raised 3 children, and she's been at-home mom for 28 years. She's done a great job with our family. That's why Galen, I think, is so brilliant. I think all 3 of our kids are great. They're just really special kids, and of course every parent in Fairfield says that. And rightfully so. The kids here are really bright kids. It's no question, you know. And
why is that?
Well, it's something about in the Bhagavad Gita talks about being born into a family of yogis. So if your parents are meditators, we've been meditating for 40 years, you know, it's a good thing.
It's not something in the water then?
No, I don't think it's something in the water. Pesticides are in the water, you know, so we don't want those. But my
point
you
raise pests.
Very good. But they've all done really, really great, and she did super job with Galen. But you know, as you know, I'm a Vedic astrologer, and that's my full-time profession, and I love astrology. What happened to me, just briefly, was that I loved Western astrology, you know, 40 years ago. I studied the I Ching, I studied Western astrology, I did all these things back in the 60s. Yeah. But when I got a Vedic astrology reading about 26 years ago, the lights just came on. I just said, this is good knowledge, and I don't want to be codependent on somebody else reading my chart, or for my wife or my children. And I couldn't afford it either, to have other people, you know, every 6 months, every 12 months, should I go left, right, up, or down? So
to that point, let me interrupt for just a minute. To that point, whenever somebody has ever done a chart for me, they have all said different things, every one of them. And then somebody said to me recently, "Are you sure you were born at that time?" And I said, "Well, even if I wasn't born at that time, they all only have that information, and they're all coming up with different stuff." So it's been very hard for me to sort of commit to one particular discipline in that, only because I haven't had an experience like that yet.
Yeah, well, that's all well and good. Your question is very valid. It's a very good point. And a lot of people, even in this community, have had that experience. In the past, if you saw 10 different astrologers, whether they're Western or Eastern, you're likely to get 10 different readings. One guy says you're going up, one guy says you're going down. And that's based on that person's intellect, consciousness, background, what books they've read. Yeah. And so my little claim to fame is that after about 10 years of study, I found a professor in India that I now think is the most brilliant professor in the world. And long story short, he's created a paradigm, a very scientific paradigm. We now have 800 Vedic astrologers in our organization. And if you see any of us, we'll all give you the same reading, because it's not based on David Hawthorne. It's based on a scientific paradigm. But what I'm trying to get to is that
I only raise that as a question because it's my misunderstanding of what's going on, because I'm not quite sure.
Well, we were lacking a scientific paradigm. I think we now have that, and you can get a very accurate readings on these things. And I've had a great joy because I know my wife and I know my 3 children, not only in the biblical sense, but in the astrological sense.
Yes.
Okay. So my point is that you can really help. It really helps to understand where your children are, where you are, where your wife is. Now, speaking of my wife, you were talking about her art. My wife has 3 exalted planets in her chart, and one of them is Venus, which is the planet of arts. And so she just is not, you know, I love artists. I think artists are great, but I love artists that can paint realistically. They can paint landscapes. They can paint portraits. They can, you know, that means they really have some talent. There's some kind of mind-body coordination that's really good. Yeah. And she's got that in spades. She's really very, very talented. Her pieces they're coming out like Andrew Wyeth now. I mean, she's really getting there.
Now, I also want to throw out there that I absolutely believe that planetary, especially when you're in the womb and you're getting formed and all that, planetary force gravities, we'll say for no other, you know, for lack of a better term, and I'm really having lack of better terms here. Okay. But the gravities seem to also play into, in addition to what influences the Earth has on you, that everything would have some effect on you. Because we're not in a vacuum. We're in one part of a giant galaxy, which is part of some humongously giant, we can't even picture it, universe. So there's so many concepts, okay, not to be philosophical, but there are so many influences that we can't possibly know personally unless we maybe look into this, unless we study it, unless we know, we are so curious about it that we go into it and we want to know the scientific, from a scientific, astrological perspective, what's going on there. Because it just makes sense to me. It just makes sense that things are forming you. What are they? And that seems to be the big question mark, at least for me. And I have to say that for years and years, I followed Sally Brompton in the TV Guide, and for whatever weirdo reason, of all places, the TV Guide, those predictions were actually pretty close.
Pretty good.
It's like Sally Brompton was all of a sudden discontinued in TV Guide, and my life was over. It's like, oh, no, Sally Brompton.
You use the word effects, and that's a good word. In the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which is where Vedic astrology, Jyotish, comes from India thousands of years ago, the sage said, planets bestow on living beings effects due to their past life karma. Now, some people don't believe in reincarnation. I think a lot of people in this community understand that reincarnation is just as real as the trees dying in the winter and coming back in the spring.
Right.
So too, the human spirit takes rebirth. So according to the sages, you are born at the time that the planets reflect your karma, all the karma that you're going to work out this lifetime. So even if you don't believe in reincarnation, you can still say that the horoscope is a reflection of the karma that you will encounter this lifetime. And it's all quite logical. If sun represents father, and sun is debilitated in a chart, afflicted, badly placed, you know that that person is going to not get support from their father on some account.
Interesting.
Either the father is gone, he died, alcoholic, separated. There's no support, and that person will have trouble with any male authority figures, the government, digestion, cardiovascular system, that type of thing. So,
now, does the moon represent the mother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, moon represents mother, Jupiter represents husband, Venus represents wife. So I'm glad my daughter Sarah is studying Vedic astrology, because I told her a long time ago, when she's dating, look at a man's chart, because if Jupiter in a man's chart, if Venus in a man's chart is afflicted, debilitated, badly placed, then his wife is going to suffer. So she's got two choices early on. See, people are like book covers. We don't know from book covers. You think, oh, that's a nice book cover, and you marry that book cover, you marry that person, and then you find out in chapter 2 or chapter 3 that this was a big mistake. So,
wisely said.
So if you know ahead of time, if a woman looks at a man's chart and says, man, his Venus is afflicted, debilitated, badly placed, his wife's going to suffer. So then she's got two choices. She goes back to him and she says, let's be friends, but not intimate. Or she comes to me and says, David, what are the planetary remedies for that man's chart? Now here's the big issue about astrology, in my opinion, is that the horoscope is your karma. If you're not aware of that horoscope, if you don't know how the planets are operating, and if you don't know when those planets are operating. Now, life doesn't happen all at once. It happens according to the hands on the clock. It's called the Vimshottari Dasha sequence. We can see the past, present, and future. Things don't happen all at once. They happen according to, it explains why a guy can go up and down. Look at Richard Nixon, goes up and then down, or somebody else goes down, like Mahatma Gandhi or Mandela or something like that, and then later they rise. Even Tim Allen was in prison, then he became very successful. So you can go up or down according to the hands on the clock. So if you don't know how the planets are operating in your chart, if you don't know when they are operating in that chart, then you will meet with the destiny in the chart. Everything's predestined will come to pass. But anything in a horoscope can be changed. But what changes it is awareness, consciousness. So once you have awareness of what's going on with your planets, you can address those issues. If you know you have some problem with Jupiter or something like that, you can work with it, if you know. So it's just self-awareness. It's just, and if you know that, wow, sun is afflicted in my chart, and I'm not going to get support from my father, but moon is great, I can get support from my mother, that's good knowledge.
I also wanted to ask you, there are performances and things you can also do on the Eastern side, if you're coming from that discipline, in order to avert dangers that are going to come. But the one thing that always stuck with me through the years, and where I didn't really worry too much about my chart, maybe, even though I should have, was the concept of if your growing in consciousness, if you're, let's throw out the term, if you're meditating,
right,
then that's sort of helping you to dodge the bullet, to avert the danger. So if you're averting the danger in that sense, you're already kind of changing the chart, although within the chart would say you're going to learn to meditate at a certain point. So there's always been a chicken and egg thing with that with me. But I've always believed the other side of that.
To me, what I say is that if we're not aware of how the planets are operating, if we're not aware of when they are operating, and if we don't know what to do to fix our charts, what I call twofold planetary astral remedies, strengthen your good planets and do charities for planets that are causing adverse effects. If you don't know those things, then when the karma comes, it's going to overwhelm you. It'll be 80, 90, 100% overwhelming. But when you start having this awareness and you start working with your chart, then what happens is that the impact is 30%, 20%, 10%. It's much more manageable. So you hit a speed bump instead of a brick wall. So listen, let me put it this way. I've been studying it for 25 years, hundreds of books, thousands of hours of study. I can't tell you how powerful this knowledge is.
I can imagine.
This is, I mean, you can see more, you can see so much. I have to hold back from what you could, because you can see everything from health, relationships, mental state, emotional state, brain tumors, cancer, you can see all this stuff, even longevity of life, it's all there.
Wow. What about now, you're in the Weekly Reader. Some people know that, and you give these really beautiful. They're always uplifting. They're always positive. They're always kind of.
Well, some of my clients don't think so. They say they're always. I guess I have to tell them everything. I have to tell them the good and the bad. But I try to present it in a way so that you don't mind the bad news so much.
Where you can hear the information. Because some people just can't hear the bad information. So but you do want them to sort of know. So are there when you look at, I was going to ask you that, when you're looking at somebody's chart, are there times where you're looking at that and you're making a choice on whether that person can hear the information in the chart? Because that might happen. You're looking at, like you just said, brain tumors and cancers and stuff like that. As you're looking, do you have to sometimes be the grown-up in the situation and realize, okay, this person we need to wait a little bit on this information, and maybe if this gets strengthened and this gets whatever, and then you come from it maybe from that perspective or that point of advice? Because it seems that would be, coming off of what we just said, that seems like that would be another healthy way to deal with the problem, yet not really overwhelm them. And on the other hand, you also want to let them know. So this is a very hard thing for you to be doing, huh?
Well, over time you learn how to present information, and you have to have compassion, number one, and you have to have some kind of wisdom as well. I mean, the older you get, maybe you get a little bit wiser. But I've come from the position of nobody has a perfect chart. I have one of the worst charts possible. Oh, absolutely, I do. And that's what led me to why. Why did I lose my mother at birth? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? So, so when you learn this, then you develop compassion for others. So I do try to help people. I say, look, this is your strength. This is the best thing in your chart. This is what I think you should pursue. You've got Jupiter in the 10th house. You should be a teacher, a professor, a consultant, a guru. That's what you should do. But this over here you got some problem here with women, or you got some problems here with sugar. You got some problems here with your heart, and so I try to help them manage that.
All right, now, coming off of this, isn't throwing you under the bus, but this is a question that I have that's a common sense question. You've done the charts for your family, right. I'm imagining.
Right.
Well, let's ask the generic question. Do they seem to be on path on that chart? Does it seem to be?
Oh no, they're absolutely, positively. Absolutely, positively.
Do they know? And they know it. Are they using? Is your family using the information?
The way I dialogue with my children is my weekly column.
Oh, okay.
They read it vigilantly, and I could tell stories, but I guess they'll get upset with me if I tell too many. But they
tell one story. You said you had a couple of Galen stories. We got to hear the Galen stories.
Well, I'm kidding. It has nothing to do with astrology, those stories, but yeah, they all respect the knowledge. They know that this can help them, and so they do use it to varying degrees.
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation where you're advising one of the kids, there's something up over here, you may not want to do it, but they're kind of on the path of doing it anyway, whatever that thing is?
Well, you asked Galen about what happened. He did have an automobile accident last year.
Right.
And we don't go into too much about that. But that weekly column, a week before, for his rising sign, I said, watch out for automobile accident. Be careful. And so he came to me after the accident and he said, Dad, from now on I'm going to take your weekly column and I'm going to paste it on the dashboard. So you can call it. You can call it ahead of time. And so those that have, those that take it seriously, they can benefit from it.
Now, Brian has gone back and forth between Fairfield and California a couple times.
Right.
Is that kind of thing in his chart?
Yes. Yeah, he's again, it has
the flexibility or whatever.
He's Gemini, social rising sign. He's like when you get him a new phone, it takes him forever to transfer the contacts over. You got 1,000 phone numbers in there, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but that's what's fun for me. Like Galen's a Cancer rising sign, very creative, very tender-hearted. One of my favorite stories about him, he was in the first grade, and he must have been like 5 or 6, something like that. And his teacher told us a story later. Her name was Miss Johnson. And what happened is that weekend, he was like in the first grade. It was a Saturday. I brought him to my office, sat him in the chair, put his chart up on the whiteboard, and did his reading. And so the next week at school, he says, you know what, Miss Johnson? You know what, Miss Johnson? He raises his hand. She said, what, Galen? He goes, I have Venus in the first house. So it was good, it was very good.
So, I have Venus in the first house too, by the way. Venus in the moon and Taurus, like we said, Taurus rising and all that.
So if you have Taurus rising, that's good. See, that puts Mercury in your Virgo, ruling your 5th house of mind, gives you a very bright mind. And Moon, exalted in the 1st house, gives you that connection with the public. It's very hospitable, very family-oriented, very, very maternal. It's a good, exalted Moon in the 1st house is very good. And Mercury ruling your house of mind is very good. Venus rules your 6th house, however, and that's sitting in the 1st house. You have to be careful because it can bring some conflict.
Conflict? What's funny is that my first 2 years in Fairfield were very, very challenging. Now, I was also told, of course, it's the melting pot. It's like it's the washing machine, not the melting pot. It is a melting pot, but it's the washing machine. So you come here and you kill a lot of karma, and you're usually having most of your challenges or a lot of challenges within the first 2 years. I'm still waiting for those first 2 years to end. I'm on my 3rd year now. My point being, it's been a challenging experience since I've been in Fairfield, and I feel like my chart was supposed to have been, I'm supposed to have all of this, The one thing that has been in common with some of the readings that I've had is there's supposed to have been with music, there was supposed to be a lot of stuff happening. And it's debatable whether television shows and radio shows and all that fall under that category.
Entertainment.
It's communication, I guess so.
Entertainment, communication arts. The thing about Fairfield that I've noticed, only having lived here for 26 years, 27 years, is that first off, it's a big summer camp.
Yeah.
It's a big summer camp.
Yeah.
And you know everybody because it's summer camp. You like most of the people, but But the thing is, Fairfield allows you to develop whoever you really are. Mm-hmm. And so some people come here and all of a sudden they become artists or musicians or astrologers or architects or writers, whatever. It allows you to focus. There's less distractions here.
Yeah, there's that.
When you live in California, and especially if you live on a beach, there's nothing but distractions all the time.
Right.
Nothing gets done.
Right.
But here you can focus, because sometimes you have to hunker down for the entire winter, and you can just focus on writing your book or writing a play or producing some software or whatever it is. And it's been a great place for raising kids. We have 3 beautiful kids from this community, and we're so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for meditation. I'm grateful for the university. I'm grateful for the knowledge and from the community. The music here, the entertainment here is unbelievable. We lived in the East Coast, we get over to New York Broadway plays. We lived in California where this stuff, but there's more entertainment here than I've seen way more stuff here than I've anyplace else.
That's a very good point. I spend a lot of time on these shows touting the talent, the local talent, and the artists and all that. And I've kind of segmented what we do here into 3 categories. It's the TM community, it's the people who've been here, as Fairfieldians, the old Parson College and before that whole community, and also the artists and musicians. It seems to be those are the three major groups. That
and the farming community is very.
That's what I meant as far as with the town, actually. But I feel that there is such a maybe there was a little tension in the beginning. When I even had this conversation with Mike and Ed and all that, and. But on the other hand, now it's so smooth. It's like a finely running machine. I think all the communities know how to work with each other, and they're uplifting each other, and that's a really sweet thing to see. And to know that it didn't start in a great place, but it ended up in a really nice place.
If you can't have peace and happiness in a small town like this, then how can you have peace and happiness in the world? It's got to work someplace. Yeah. And so it is. It's accepting diversity, accepting different viewpoints. But it's being creative. I mean, meditation really helps the creativity, no question. Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that the other forms of raised consciousness, such as the musical community, meeting the artist community, meeting now the writers community. I mean, that those arts, sure, they may be benefiting from what's going on, on the uplift of consciousness, but also they're bringing in their own language and their own design into this town, and I really feel that I like the summer camp analogy, because I feel like at all times I feel like I'm always running into somebody, and you're always doing something, and also the experimentation thing. You can experiment in this, experiment in that. Right. But please even remember your point, because I just want to finish my thought, because this is so hard to get to the end of my blabbering. But the one thing I really love about this town more than anything else is. And I've had my fair share of challenges with trying to help mentor a couple of young people. That it almost took me out. But on the other hand, the young community, as I'm seeing it here, and it has a lot to do with the experimentation in arts and all of that, they have so gelled, and they know so that they want to be here. They know the outside world. They're not dumb, and they're very smart kids. And they're kids. I call them kids. They're really in their 20s, etc. But they really know. They're making choices in life that are important, and they want to stay here. They're staying here, and it's not New York, and it's not L.A. and all that. And those would be the career choices if they really wanted to make it in whatever.
Right. Well, our daughter Sarah went to L.A. for almost 2 years, and she was very successful there in terms of she was an actress and a model, and she was doing a lot of work, and she ended up, one of the last things she did was she did a movie with Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman. Yeah. But in the end, she came back to Fairfield, and a lot of people do, because this is home, and there's a lot of creativity here. What I was thinking before was about the consciousness, and I have a lot of respect for our farming community here, because if you think about farmers, what have they done their whole life? They're outdoors with nature. Mm-hmm. And they love the land, they love the freedom, they love the independence. They're entrepreneurs to begin with. They're independent. I have a lot of respect, and that openness where they are, that brings all this consciousness, all this awareness. So I think it's very, very good. To me, all the paths going up the mountain to the top, to so-called enlightenment, I think they're all worthy paths. I think all the paths are good. I don't care. Some paths are straight, some go around, but they all get you to the top sooner or later. Mm-hmm. There's only one path that's not good, and that's the one that's at the bottom that goes in circles. And somebody at the bottom is saying, you're all wrong, and, you should only be on this path. So take any path you want, difficult. And the idea is to develop your full potential, whatever it is, and to contribute to society, to be a good person. One of the things I believe in is that one of the best things you can do in life is to be considerate to other people. And it starts with your own family. Yeah. You're considerate to your wife, you're considerate to your children, you're considerate to friends, to strangers. Life goes smooth. You know, it's just being considerate. So,
wasn't it one of the Monty Python movies? I forgot which one. Where it's basically where it's sort of like, well, what are we supposed to do, Lord, or whatever? And it's sort of like, just don't hurt each other.
Right.
I think
that's a good point.
And I think to take that further, though, it's also try to be supportive of each other.
Well, that's being considerate.
It's being considerate. Yes.
You help those that need help.
Yeah, I like to do that with young people in particular, because it's like this is their first time around. Well, in this particular
one of the
setting.
One of the things I really support that's going on right now with our TM movement is the resurgence of teaching people to meditate. See, to me, that's the best. And I'm glad that David Lynch and Donovan and all these people out there teaching people to meditate. They're teaching the students, they're teaching the war heroes, the soldiers, and I still, I can see this ad, you know, still meditating after all these years, you know. So meditation is good.
Yeah, yep. And so is trying to be a good human. I think that sometimes sometimes a person doesn't find meditation, or they don't find TM, or they don't find any of those things, but they are truly good people and they help the people around them.
Very good point.
And some of those people are religious, and et cetera. Right. And I feel like we've got, that's why I love this town. It's such the melting pot of all of this.
The bottom line is, how do you treat other people? And it doesn't matter what your background is, but if you are treating other people with kindness and respect and love and generosity, then
dignity, yeah.
It works well.
What is your prediction 5 years from now, Fairfield? How do you picture it? Instead of how will it be, how would you like to see it?
Wow, that's a good question. I am so much into living in the present, I forgot about the future. I forgot about the past. I can't answer that. Just more of what we have, and just keep growing in a positive direction. You know, we're going to have there's great talent coming up. The kids are doing great.
They are.
And
yeah. Especially your family. You know, we didn't even get to talk about we didn't get to talk about individuals as far as what they're doing right now. But I'm imagining, I mean, I guess we're running out of time now, but I definitely want to tell you how much I admire your family.
Well, thank you.
On camera, in front of everyone in Fairfield.
Well, I
love your family. I think it's
thank you so much. I think a lot of it has to do with Eileen being at home for the last 28 years, taking care of our family. She's been great, and there's no question about that. Yeah. So, and everybody's different. Everybody's got their own chart. It's like, you know, it's like I call my kids like spinning tops on the table. You got to run over once in a while. One of them's falling off. You got to put it back on, and they're all like different flapjacks. No flapjacks are the same. You know, everyone's different. Yeah. But they're all great, and they all have some talent, and I just hope they continue to develop that and share the light. And,
yeah, nice. And what's on your iPod these days? What are you listening to?
I don't have an iPod.
What are you listening to anyway? What records are you listening to?
Well, that's I really love music. I do play acoustic guitar and little keyboard.
Oh, that's right.
And
how come you're not over at Cafe P?
Because it's not my thing. I'm not a public entertainer, but I really have fun at our home with our family, and sometimes some friends come over. We'll jam. There's some great musicians in this town. I've had the joy of playing with some of them. It was great.
Did you teach Galen any initial guitar stuff?
I think I helped inspire him get going in that direction. We've always had a piano in our house. We've always had guitars in our house, a bunch of guitars. And he's got guitars and ukuleles and trumpets and piano. He's a good kid. Sarah's got a great voice and great talent, very natural. But yeah, music has been a great part of our life. And I forgot where we were talking about.
Yeah, about your family, actually.
But no, my iPod.
iPad, we started with the...
yeah, there's, what is it? Bombay Doom or something like that. These guys are great. There's a great jam band that I like. I can't remember the name.
Are you prone to that?
Bombay,
do you like, well, of course, Grateful
Doom.
Dead and all that, of course. Quicksilver.
But yeah, I was listening to some Eric Reed this morning in my office. He's a jazz pianist, and I love just good jazz. That's mellow. You know, I don't like the crazy jazz.
You know what you would love? Although it might be borderline crazy, you might love the Medeski, Martin, and Wood stuff. John Medeski in particular. We've had him as our Skype guest, but these guys are on the edge as far as kicking improv into a bigger light. I really feel like there's a whole bunch of those kind of acts. The Bad Plus is another one, a couple of others. And it's my feeling is that's where a lot of people who are kind of missing the things they liked about maybe the jam element of what was going on in rock, and they can't really find you. It's hard to, Fish. You're going to go to Fish. You're going to go to a couple of acts like that. But jazz has, especially some of these other acts, they got that concept, and they are taking it like light years ahead.
I like to put a little plug in for KRUU-FM. But my favorite guy on there, really one of my favorite guys, there's some great guys. I love the voice, what's his name? Brandon Nelson has got the best DJ voice I've ever heard in my life. It's just amazing. But some of the best music is Andy Bargastock.
Oh, I know that.
He's got French Toast, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Even if you're not in Fairfield, you can listen to it on the internet. krufm.com.
I say that facetiously because I have a show on there 3 days a week, and then it's repeated another 3 days a week. So when I go, who, what, I'm only joking.
Okay.
And then also Andy
Andy's got great music, unheard. You know, he really finds these really jewels all over the place. It's great, great music. I love Wednesday night, listening to him for 2 hours.
And then Tuesday night, Monday Monday night's another night. Monday night has a lot of great prog rock. And then Tuesday night you have Andy McKenzie, who, you know,
but after the food show.
Food show would be on
Wednesday.
Food show's on Wednesdays.
Before, yeah, I like that one too. That's Boss, Steve Boss.
Oh, Steve Boss is amazing.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and Jimmy's Planet Erstwhile and all that. Oh no, Crew is a great station.
It's great. Like I said, we have got so much to be happy for and grateful for in Fairfield in terms of the people and the creativity, and it's just a great place to live.
It really is. And there's nothing else that can be said over that. So Fairfield 2.0, it was the name of the show, and we talked about Fairfield, and we didn't say anything to Jason. Hi, Jason. Jason Strong, the man behind the everything here. And David Hawthorne, thank you very, very much for being a guest on the show.
Thanks.
I love talking about all the stuff we talked about, and your family. Very cool stuff. And please come back some other time.
Okay, thanks. Love it. Thanks. I enjoyed being here.
All right. And then hang in there, everybody. There's going to be a Skype interview. And take care. Fairfield. Here is Teddy Geiger, young singer-songwriter who is a singer-songwriter. He's also an actor. He's had a huge album with Underage Thinking and the song For You I Will. And let's just start talking with him right now because he has a new album called The Last Fears. It doesn't exactly pick up where the last album is, but it definitely shows major growth. But let's talk with him right now. Hey, Teddy, how are you?
How's it going, man? Good to talk to you.
Nice to talk with you too. I'm really happy about this new album. I have a funny story about, first of all, Teddy Geiger, where I was at Universal. I was working at Universal, and there was this new head honcho that got installed over there. And your album had just come out, and as usual, right? The revolving door head honchos. And I went to this guy and I said, you know, I was a big fan of John Mayer, and I went to him and I said, you know, this Teddy Geiger guy is really a great songwriter. You got to listen to him, and it reminds me, you know, of the same kind of soul that John's first album had. And the guy said, you can't go, and so my boss's boss or whoever the guy was says, you can't go around saying things like that. It'll cut down your credibility. And I'm saying, but this is a really good album. Why don't you listen to it? And he said, it doesn't matter. John Mayer's, you know, he's like a big John Mayer fan. So, as I was, but he wasn't, but it's like, king. I'm sorry?
John Mayer's king.
I know, John Mayer's king. Remember that in Family Guy, that was one of my favorite things where on the side of the wall, they he passes the building and it says, just stop or something like that.
Yeah,
but
that's enough.
But that's enough. That's right. But that's not the whole point. I still like John Mayer's music, but I also like Teddy Geiger's music. And you have a new. Let's get into your new album, The Last Fears. The Last Fears. What is that about?
Well, it's kind of about like that moment when, in any time you're kind of following your dreams or whatever it is. Like the first time I ever went on a roller coaster, I was super excited, really wanted to do it, and then there came a time like where I saw it and it was huge, and I'm like, you know, like 6, 7 years old, and I started like freaking out. I didn't want to get on, and then by the time like I actually decided to get into the car, we're going up the hill, and I'm like breaking into tears, and my dad's looking at me like, this is why it's fun, you'll get it. Like, I'm like, what do you mean this is why it's fun? I'm terrified. As a kid, you don't get that like you do these things because they kind of freak you out a little bit.
Right.
But anyways, then there's this moment kind of coming down the hill where all of that fear turned into joy and like just super excited. And it's kind of the same thing every time I get on stage, or it's been kind of the same thing also pulling together songs for a new record to put out, like following up that last one, because there was a bit of success and part of you, you know, not that it really matters, but the part of you is afraid like, oh, I'm going to put something else out, and what if it's not as successful, or what if people don't like it, or, you know, whatever it is.
Well, you know, the cool thing about this record is that, as I said, it doesn't pick up exactly where the last record left off. It's more like there's been some major, I guess, growth, change, whatever you want to call it. But then you have a history of being a producer. You've been on a you've been on you were on that TV series Love Monkey. You were in The Rocker. I mean, you have quite a history in back of you now, and you started all of this. You started pretty young. So, how do you look at? I usually ask this towards the end of an interview, but I want to ask you right now, mainly because of all of the success you've had in a very short amount of time. What do you think of all of that at this point?
I mean, it's hard to say. I just feel glad to be able to be working with music and doing stuff creatively and support myself doing that, because that's, it's just what I love to do. And the life's goal is just kind of to stay involved in creative work and kind of keep developing myself as someone who is doing creative work. And I don't know, it's just cool to be able to have opportunities to like meet other people who are like at a much higher level than me and like be involved in projects and always be learning. And that's kind of what the best part of the whole thing for me.
Nicely said. I want to also, let's get into this album, The Last Fears. You have a lot of, now, of course you're going to be, you're going to have these pop hit single type of obvious anthemish type of stuff on here, but you also have things like Ordinary Man and you have things like Save Me. Where did you come from in writing all of this? Did you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to start writing for my album, or is this sort of like a bunch of songs you've been writing for a while?
It's kind of both. Some of it, I mean, I definitely made it. I said I'm going to sit down and make an album that's guitar and piano and minimal production. Not like it didn't end up being as minimal as I initially thought, but that was the goal. So I just tried to like write songs that I could sit down and play on guitar or on piano and just kind of let the songs live that way. And then usually my process for coming up with subject matter is I'll just kind of start mumbling over the songs, and there'll be like a couple of key words that start popping up and like, a bit of like a theme, and then I'll kind of sit down at some point and kind of listen back to all of those, like I'll just record me mumbling over the song.
Right.
And then eventually that just kind of turns into some lyrics, and then I'll end up writing some lyrics as well. But a lot of it just kind of just happens, if you're like playing the song all day, trying a bunch of different stuff, like, I don't know, you like with anything, it's like you start to just get a feel for like what the song's sounding like, and something happened to you the other day and you put two and two together and you're like,
what poison have you picked as far as your recording process? Do you use Pro Tools, when you're at home?
Pro Tools primarily, and I've just started getting into that program Ableton Live.
I was about to ask you, have you discovered Ableton yet?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know, like, there's so much stuff you can do in it, but I know, like, the basics, and I've just kind of been getting my electronic dance DJ vibe on.
Nice. Now, you worked with Larry Campbell, of all people, on this project. Larry Campbell being one of my favorite arrangers over the years. Who else is with you on this project?
It's me, my manager. There's a couple other people who have co-written some of the songs with me, and then the drummer in my band played on a couple of the songs, and I had a few other friends kind of come on and play some guitars and bass and stuff like that.
Yeah, but your approach to this was really more personal, and that's kind of why it's really the focus on you as instrumentalist in addition to being the vocalist and songwriter.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What do you think as far as what I'd like to do is I'd like to get just a little bit of history. When did you get into what is the history of your turning the corner like this? You were pretty young when you put out Underage Thinking. How did that process happen? What was the progress from I guess somebody who's writing songs for yourself and then suddenly getting a recording contract?
I was writing songs in the basement all the time, and kind of neglecting my homework, and my grades were kind of slipping, and I was kind of increasingly devoted to music. And my mom saw this happening, and also she saw an ad for a reality television show on television, and so she was like, "All right, we gotta like get you doing music more often because it's obviously, what you want to do, and, school's not working out so great, buddy. So she's like, go do this reality show. And I'm like, I was like, nah. And then she's like, no, you have to do it. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and, in high school that I didn't want to leave for that reason. I didn't want to I was just nervous about the whole thing. So I'm in tears, and she's forcing me to do this thing. And it ended up kind of being the big break that started the whole ball rolling.
Now, I have to ask you, was that In Search of the Partridge Family?
Yes.
Now, I have to tell you, I want to share something we have in common, sort of, in that my big break came because of the original Partridge Family. Yeah, I was quote discovered, quote unquote, however you would say that, by Terry Cashman and Tommy West, who were the songwriters for some of the songs on that original series. And yeah, they were also Jim Croce's producers. But it was those
are great songs.
Those are a lot of, what's very funny. Most people don't think of it like that. And also they were trying to emulate, because of the people involved in that show, they were trying to emulate a cross between the Cowsills, which the show was sort of based on loosely, and the Beach Boys. And most people forget that, when you hear those background vocals sort of sound a little like, Beach Boy, faux Beach Boy things going on. And that's exactly what they were doing.
There's a little bit of, that some of them have that haunting kind of background vocal thing.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. Now from there, let's also continue this, because you have also guest stints on things like, well, for instance, you were on the Royal Pains.
Yes. Just recently. That was a lot of fun.
Do you enjoy acting as much as you enjoy making music?
I think music's kind of always come first. I mean, I've just spent a lot more time doing it and always been drawn to it. I've always kind of been interested in films, and me and my cousins would make little movies when we were younger and stuff like that. But I was never in musical theater. I feel pretty inadequate as an actor. I feel like I don't have the practice in. I haven't put the time in. So part of me just feels like a little bit like a fish out of water. But it's also fun, to go in on auditions and work with people on acting stuff. But
yeah.
it definitely doesn't feel like my first.
Your first love. Although your first thing, but although you were a natural on Love Monkey. I really enjoyed that that series. That was the Tom.
I played musicians well, I think. if it's a musician role, I'm down.
That was the Tom Hanks thing too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever? Obviously, you met him, but what was the chemistry on the set like? Not so much with Tom Hanks, but just in general.
It was cool. Everyone on set was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's cool. I've never really worked on any. Well, yeah, I don't know. It's just cool when everyone gets along and people are having a good time at work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also the same can be said for the rocker. Yeah, exactly. It's the same kind of thing, wasn't it? Same kind of role that you play.
Yeah, totally.
What is the future for? What are you looking forward to doing? What's your goal? Do you have a goal?
I feel like in the end, I'd like to be primarily songwriting and producing. Because my favorite stuff is kind of that initial, spark of creativity in the studio and coming up with a new idea and kind of bringing that to becoming a full song that you can sit down and listen to. That's my favorite thing in the world. And I enjoy the touring side of things as well. And it would be cool to be able to support myself only via writing and production, and then also be able to do little tours here and there and get out on the road and do that. But writing and production is that's what I love to do.
Nice. I do have to ask you also, because of your popularity, especially at the time of your hit, you were on the cover of 17.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when you actually saw the cover for the first time?
I mean, I don't even know. It was so surreal. And there was a lot of that sort of thing going on, of me seeing myself we did a Levi's thing too, and there was, but eventually it just started it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't feel like it's like on a magazine that's going out all over the world. It just feels kind of like I'm looking at something I like made in Photoshop in my house or something. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like the reality it never really like sinks in necessarily.
Yeah. Have you had some co-writing opportunities? Have people approached you to collaborate?
Yeah, I've been trying to do more and more of that sort of thing. And there's a couple songs that people have cut of stuff that I've written. But I'm trying to do more and more, as much of that as possible.
Dude, I look at people like I look at songwriters out there like Bruno Mars.
He's so good. Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, Bruno Mars, it's really interesting because I feel like, get the two of you together. I wonder what that kind of a collaboration would be like. Now, the reason why I say that is because you both have such a good sense of pop, and you hit it all the right. Both of you hit it all the right moments, and I see similarities between your writing styles. So I was just thinking that would be quite a collaboration.
I mean, yeah, I would love that. That would be top of the list.
Now, are you going to be touring for this record?
We're doing these dates in May with Tyler Hilton and Ryan Cabrera. And then I have some stuff booked for September, and then we're kind of working on filling up the summer. And the record just came out, so we're just going to kind of send that around and see what happens.
Yeah, Tyler Hilton. That's an interesting name that came up because he was on what was the name of the television show? The basketball One Tree Hill. That's right. It's funny because he's again I guess he's in your class, although. I wouldn't compare the two of you as far as styles or anything like that, but there is this sort of.
He's very talented.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, and I wouldn't dispute that. I think he's a great guy too. I think I've interviewed him in the past, but my point is that I think that what's interesting is that the spread across different medias of people who are talented in, let's say, music. It's interesting to watch those kind of proliferations. I mean, and I guess part of it is you could become a YouTube star in like 3 seconds these days too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
when people blow up on YouTube.
Yeah,
that's been like the new something, American Idol.
That's a good point. That's really true. What is your advice for new artists?
Oh, for new artists, I guess just to write as much as you possibly can. And continue to play out and push yourself, even if it feels awkward or weird, and you don't like it at first. If you want to do it, I feel like the more you're playing out, the more you're writing your own music. Even if you hate what you're, when I first started writing songs, I didn't like any of the songs I was writing, but my mom did. She liked all of them. It takes some. Go ahead. Oh yeah, but just to also find people that support what you're doing and can kind of help give you feedback and criticism in a way that you can appreciate, and people that kind of are help pushing you to get better, and also find the best players in your school and start playing together and hanging out and playing music, and kind of because in school I had a lot of other musician friends, and we all really push each other to do better, and playing each other's stuff and stuff like that. I think always is really helpful.
Nice, yeah. And it takes a mom, doesn't it? Also.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a joy. I really appreciate finally talking with you, especially since I got taken down a peg or two by my boss's boss for supporting you over the years.
Yeah, geez, come on.
I know. What's funny is with stuff like that, it's almost like you really want to see whoever it is, just really turn the corner and become huge. And I think that again, you've already had a big hit. You had a big album, and I'm imagining you're going to be following the same trajectory, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Teddy, all the best with a new album, and let's talk again in the future.
All right, sounds great. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. All right, bye, buddy.
Bye-bye.